The Unseen Glimmer. Chapter 1. Chapter 1. The Echoes of Christmas. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the once thriving forest surrounding Mark's family's cabin. It had been 10 years since he last set foot in this eerie place, a refuge for his fractured memories and an escape from reality. As Mark drove up the winding path that led to the cabin, the anticipation gnawed at him, each bump in the road echoing through the hollow silence. He could still recall those Christmas holidays as if they had happened yesterday. The laughter, the warmth of family gatherings, and then the sudden darkness. The night his father's body was found lifeless in the living room, a victim of what authorities said was a tragic accident. But Mark knew better. He'd seen it all. His mother had sold the cabin shortly after, desperate to erase any reminders of that fateful Christmas. But Mark couldn't let it go. He needed to return, if only to confront the ghosts of his past had done on. The car rolled to a stop in front of the dilapidated structure, and Mark stepped out into the crisp night air. The cabin looked much as he remembered, its once bright paint now faded and cracked. He fumbled with the rusted lock, memories of the last time flooding back, his father teaching him how to fix it, their bond strengthened by these small acts of camaraderie. With a final tug, the door swung open, revealing the same wooden floor that had once been polished to perfection. Mark's breath fogged in the cold air as he stepped inside. The smell of damp wood and musty cloth filled his nostrils, reminding him of countless winters spent here. He walked through the familiar rooms, each one more haunting than the last. Everything seemed unchanged, yet something felt off. A whisper of movement caught his eye out of the corner of his eye, but when he turned to look, there was nothing there. As Mark settled into the old rocking chair in front of the fireplace, a sense of unease crept over him. The flickering flames cast dancing shadows on the walls, and every creak of the floor seemed louder than before. He tried to push the fear away, but it was relentless, gnawing at his sanity. In that moment, Mark realized he had embarked on this journey not just to confront his past, but to uncover the truth behind the unanswered questions that had haunted him for so long. And as the night deepened, he felt a cold presence in the air, an unseen glimmer watching from the shadows. Chapter 2. Chapter 2. The Shadows Loom. Mark's anxiety grew as the hours passed. He found himself constantly looking over his shoulder, expecting to see someone lurking in the dark corners of the cabin. The more he tried to focus on the task at hand, searching for clues about his father's death, the more his mind raced with paranoia. He began examining every nook and cranny of the cabin. Behind a dusty bookshelf, he found an old journal that once belonged to his grandfather. Its pages were filled with cryptic writings about strange occurrences in the forest surrounding the cabin. Mark read about sightings of ghostly figures and unexplained phenomena that had plagued this land for generations. The more he read, the more convinced he became that there was something sinister lurking here. His suspicions were soon confirmed when he encountered a series of inexplicable events. Unbeknownst to him, someone or something was disrupting his stay. At first, it was subtle, a light flickering in the middle of the night, shadows moving in the corner of his eye. Then it escalated. Mark woke up one morning to find that the windows had been boarded up from the outside, making it impossible for him to leave if he wanted to. He tried to pry them open, but found they were locked from the other side. As the days passed, the incidents grew more frequent and disturbing. Mark heard footsteps above him late at night, even though no one was supposed to be in the cabin. He noticed items going missing: his phone, a flashlight, even a journal he had left on the table overnight. Every time he searched for them, they were gone, as if someone or something was playing a cruel game with him. Mark's mind began to unravel. He found himself doubting his own sanity, questioning whether he was being haunted by ghosts or stalked by an unseen adversary. Each night, he would barricade himself in the small bathroom, hoping it might be a safe haven from whatever was chasing him. One evening, as Mark sat in front of the fireplace, trying to gather his thoughts, he noticed something strange reflected in the flames. A pair of glowing eyes watched him intently, and when he turned to face them, they vanished into the shadows. Mark's heart raced as he realized that the unseen presence wasn't just a figment of his imagination. It was real. But who or what was behind these events? And how was it connected to his father's death? Mark knew he had to find answers. But with every step closer, he felt himself being pulled further into a darkness he couldn't escape. Chapter 3. Chapter 3. The Fractured Mirror. Desperate for answers, Mark delved deeper into the journal left by his grandfather. He discovered an old map that led him to the basement of the cabin, a place he had never explored before. With trembling hands, he descended the narrow staircase, feeling as though something was following close behind. The basement was dimly lit by a single bulb hanging from the ceiling. As Mark navigated through the cluttered space, he stumbled upon a hidden door that led to an even darker room. In the center of the room stood an ornate mirror, covered in dust and age but still reflecting his anxious face back at him. Driven by curiosity and desperation, Mark approached the mirror. As he reached out to touch it, a strange sensation washed over him, a feeling as though he was being pulled into another dimension. The world around him began to blur, and for a moment, he felt as though he had crossed the threshold between reality and his own mind. The mirror reflected not just Mark's image, but also flickering images of past events. His father teaching him in the living room, the tragic night at the cabin, and finally, the ghostly figure that had been haunting him. As the reflections played out, Mark realized that these were not just memories. They were messages from a place beyond his understanding. The mirror's surface began to glow with an eerie light, and voices, whispered and distorted, echoed through the room. Mark couldn't tell if he was hearing the past or the future. The images in the mirror grew more intense, and for a moment, he saw himself as an old man, standing in the very same place. The mirror's glow intensified until it became a dazzling light that filled the entire basement. Mark felt himself being drawn into its radiant core, and as he crossed the threshold, he could no longer differentiate between reality and his own mind. He was trapped in a realm where time and space had no meaning, and the boundaries between past, present, and future blurred into one. As the light enveloped him, Mark felt a sense of peace wash over him, a revelation that perhaps the answers he sought were not just in his memories, but also in the unseen world that lay beyond. And as he was consumed by the light, Mark knew that he had embarked on a journey that would change his understanding of who he was and what he believed in forever.